Welcome back, everybody, to another outstanding edition of the Square Table Degenerates podcast. We're joined today by Mr. John Kapelos from Breakfast Club fame. How are you today, sir?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking, Joe.
Good deal. Good deal. Where are you living at today? Where are you talking to me from?
I'm in a little town called Hollywood, California.
Okay, Hollywood. I've heard of it. Just like LA, but right outside. Outstanding.
Yeah, it's a little suburb.
Okay. Now, the internet tells me you were born March of '56 in London, Ontario, Canada. Is that correct?
The internet does not lie in that case, no.
Okay. So it says you were you're Greek, you're fluent in Greek, and you're Greek Canadian. Now, can you still speak Greek, or did you lose it over time?
The fluent in Greek thing has been, I think, thrown out of proportion. I can speak and understand a little bit of Greek. I am not what you call absolutely fluent, but in the day, when my parents were talking about me, I could understand what they were saying.
Okay, so your parents spoke fluent Greek when you was growing up, then?
Yeah, my mother was born in Boston, and my dad was born in Greece, but he came over when he was a boy, like 11, 12 years old. So they both spoke both languages. My mother had, Greek parents, so she basically had to translate for them growing up as a girl. And but they were like, we spoke English. They would only speak Greek when they were kind of they knew that we'd want to know what they were saying, so they did it so that we'd learn Greek, but it never really worked. It never really took.
How did you guys end up in Canada? Where did they end up meeting, and how did they settle in Canada?
Well, my dad came up to Canada when he first came over from Greece, 1925. Almost 100 years ago now. My parents are both long gone, and so because his brother was there, and what happens with a lot of people is they go where their families are. If their family's here, they go there. Boom, boom. So Dad went to London, Ontario, it's 2 hours from Detroit. It's most of the Canadian population is within a 100 and 200 mile radius of the U.S. border.
Right.
So, and then we had relatives in Boston. My dad had a sister who married a man who lived in Boston. So there was a big Boston connection. And my mother's family's from Boston. And just before the Second War, my father went down to Boston for some event, and he met my mom. And they corresponded during the war. And then 7 years later, they hooked up in 1946, and my dad dragged her back to Canada. And that's a whole family story there. It's like, oh.
Nice. Well, I'm in Cleveland, and London is right across the Lake Erie from where we're at. Because when I was growing up, we used to have this little black and white television in the attic, and you can get Channel 10 out of Ontario. So I remember. Oh,
yeah, you got Channel 10. Well, that's what I grew up with. Oh, boy.
Okay,
and
yeah.
We used to watch Erie, Pennsylvania, and a few Cleveland stations. I forget the ones in Cleveland, but the call letters. But I was just listening to the radio. I think they're talking about the new Cleveland baseball team. What's it going to be called? Cleveland Rocks, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, geez. So that's a sore subject for a lot of us Indians fans. We're like, oh my God, you're really going to kill everything, even the name?
I didn't mean to bring it up, but I just.
But it's weird because even the in theory it's not the worst thing in the world to change the name, but the names they come up with they're just so over the top and corporate thought out cheesy that it's like just call it Cleveland. Do like they did with the Redskins and call it the Cleveland baseball team. We'll be happier with that.
Yeah, I mean it's what it is, right? They just call it Cleveland baseball would be generic.
Now, how'd you like growing up in Canada? How was life up there?
I loved it. I mean. I sort of had the best of both worlds because, you grow up, if you grow up in Canada, particularly that time, you sort of had a bit of English, British TV, and then a lot of American TV. So you'd have sort of two types of television. And then you'd always have the cultures sort of barking at you. Like the United States was always there. And because my mom was an American, I went to Boston constantly. So we were always going across the border. Which was always a source of fun and entertainment for all of us. Canadian, growing up in Canada at that time was really, it was a different time, I think, for a lot of things. But it was pretty damn good. I always felt as being a little bit of an American growing up there, because my mother, I was the youngest of three, and my mother sort of groomed me as her little American. And I liked things American. When we played war on the street, I'd be the USGI, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And you're probably going to hate to hear this, but I always have my Boston Red Sox hat on, and because I had incredible loyalty to Boston, because I was a mama's boy. So what else?
I was like that with Cleveland teams, and I spent 3-4 years in Chicago when we were growing up, and I was always go Indians and go Browns, and that was back in the '80s when everything was
So where'd you live in Chicago?
Right outside about an hour west of downtown, is a place called Carpentersville. It's in Cook County, I think it was.
And you still claim that you lived in Chicago?
Yeah. Well, I mean, back then it was whatever. My dad commuted every day to downtown. He would work right next to the Sears Tower, so I would just because you say Carpentersville, Illinois, nobody knows what it is, and the next biggest city is Elgin, and nobody knows what that is. And
well, I know Elgin. I mean, I worked at Second City. We played at the what was the name of the theater? The Chateau Louise in Elgin, Illinois.
Okay, my brother was actually born in that hospital there in Elgin. Okay, small world.
Yeah, well, we know Elgin from way back when.
Now, when you coming up in high school in Canada, did you play sports? Were you in drama clubs, stuff like that? What was your?
I played football and I didn't like it. I wasn't very good at it. I played basketball was the sport I liked, and I played a lot of hockey when I was in public school, like from kindergarten through 8th grade. But I had really long hair, and my coach and this is a really crummy story, but I was playing basketball and I had my sort of John Lennon hair down to here, and and I'm playing basketball, and the coach, who was a real a-hole, fucking asshole, grabbed me by the hair and threw me down the court and said, "We don't want no fucking Indians on this team."
Oh, geez.
Now, if that happened today, the guy would be, first of all, he grabbed my hair and threw me down. And secondly, he called me a fucking Indian, which is, a native person, Aboriginal, whatever you want to call it. And in Canada, it's a crime. It's hate speak, right? 2021 at least. But it was enough for me to go out to the parking lot and light a joint and say, that's it. I'm going to the art side. Not that I lit a joint, but metaphorically speaking.
I feel it. Now, this is a silly question, but you've obviously seen the movie The Breakfast Club. You were in it. Which of the characters in the movie, the 5 main ones, not you and the principal, which of the ones would you say your high school career was most like?
Well, what character was I like in that group, or what?
Yeah, what if John Kapelos was in high school back, what would your style been like at all the characters that were in the movie?
I had a lot of friends that were like Brian, Michael Hall's character, sort of nerdy, smart types who, but I mean, not like I was Bender at all, but I probably wanted to be like the Bender type. I was pretty rebellious and angry. And those elements still exist in my psyche, but my crew, so to speak, they were all over the map, and they were pretty dorky, but they're pretty anarchic. I mean, a lot of breaking rules. We had this thing called the Ontario Handball League, where we would play with these Super Balls. Remember the Super Balls?
Oh yeah.
We would play with them in like pretend this game of handball in the hallways of school, and we would bean people. The girls hated it. We'd be always reported, and these balls would be zinging around in the hallway. And there were no rules to the game except we just would be whipping balls at each other. But I mean, it sounds so stupid in retrospect, because you look at all these other high schools where like guys were, intense, whatever. Like my high school was pretty white bread, middle class. Nothing really ever bad happened. There was a girl once who was going to score some pot at noon, because there was a lot of pot and hash in my school. When I went into high school in 1969-70, and there were just a lot of people. Everybody would smoke cigarettes, and there was just a lot of reefer. So this girl, I remember one day, went off to buy some pot at lunch, and she came back and she was arrested with 2 Ontario provincial police officers. And she happened to be from one of the finer families, so it was a lot of drama for nothing. And there were a lot of good times in high school. I don't think that I lived the John Hughes life, though. I mean, we didn't have those intense sessions. You know, I remember a lot of high school. Just how about you? Just there was a lot of boredom. I remember.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my high school was like, trying to figure out where I was fitting in. And I would say I was more of a, like you said, wanting to be a bender type. I mean, I tried the football thing. I was the Sheen Parks. I can't remember his name. Not Charlie Sheen. Estevez, Emilio Estevez's character. So I obviously wanted to be like that. And then, the nerdy part of me, like Michael Hall's character. So I was probably a combination of, honestly, I was probably most Allison's character. If we're being honest, I was probably mostly like that, just kind of awkward and just telling lies to see how much I could get ahead and drink beer and shit like that. So it was, probably that would be the most character I related to.
The thing is that there are movies. I did a movie called The Late Shift, and which is about Leno and Letterman, and it was on HBO. It was several years ago, and there was a character in it who was Jay Leno's manager, a woman named Helen Kushnick, and apparently, and Kathy Bates played her in the movie, and apparently she swore, she could create swear words, like she could curse as the day is long, and she had an incredibly vivid vocabulary for swearing. And the point of this story is that they had to tone her down for the movie because they said if we really put her what she was really like in real life, people wouldn't believe it or they'd be offended. And the fact of the matter is the guys I knew in high school that were really out there, you couldn't put them in a movie because people would go, that's just too much. I mean, we had one guy in school who was a teenage alcoholic. And but we had a lot of fun. But he probably was a teenage alcoholic. He had hollowed out the dashboard of his car and put in a freezing unit, so he could hit the dashboard. And in Ontario, we had these brown bottles called stubby beer bottles, and he'd pop the beer bottle open, chug it, and then whip it out the window. And he had like probably 48 beers in this lined up in this sort of thing, the refrigerated unit he created in his dashboard. And like, if I put that in a movie, people would say, nah. But he had engineered it perfectly. His father was a doctor. It's a very wealthy family. He was an only child. I don't think he's with us anymore. I think he shuffled off the mortal coil, as Shakespeare said several years ago. But, guys like that don't last long too, right?
I was kind of like that in high school. It's funny you mentioned that story because when I was a senior year, not many people know this story. I never got caught with this, but I was going this. I'm 44, so it was 1995. I was driving. It was raining, and I was drinking a 40 of this stuff called Little Kings. I think they still make it. I don't drink anymore. I've been sober since 2018. It's been a fun roller coaster. My fans know how it is. But so I was driving to. We had two campuses in our school. I'm on the west side of Cleveland, and we go to campus on the east side. I was drinking a 40 of Little Kings. And I had two guys in the car with me, and it was raining out, and I was gonna gun it and go around this guy, but I realized I couldn't make it, so I hit the brake, and I was in a Dodge Omni, and my car skidded, and I hit the guy, and then went over the side, and I was like, "Fuck, I gotta get rid of this beer bottle," because if I get caught with beer, that's a DUI. I'm probably getting expelled from school. I was going to the servers coming up, stuff like that. So I chucked it out the window, and the guy, his car had his fender was pounded, and it's where he couldn't drive. He ended up bounded out, and they called my insurance company. I just called school, told them I was going to be like 20 minutes late, and totally got away with it. But yeah, that's a cautionary tale, man. I know. I joked on Facebook.
You were on your way to school and you were drinking?
I was on my way to school drinking beer. Yeah.
Oh, Joe, you got to. I'm sure your life story when it's all written out in black and white is going to be quite the sight, right?
That's what I'm saying. That's what you're relating to. It's like there's some things that are so unbelievable that you can't even print it out because just people are like, yeah, right. But I mean, it's just like there are some things in life that are just like that, man. It's just so ridiculous that you're just like. That's why the movies. I mean, in the movies, like even in the movie The Breakfast Club, they talk about when the characters break down their lives and stuff, and they give the examples. I mean, you just picture it, but living those examples, if characters were in the movie that they give, is just a crazy, totally different world than people realize just on the silver screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that. Truth be told, I think a lot of people's lives are probably more confusing than even that. I mean, there's just a lot of strange out there, right?
Oh yeah. So after you got out of high school, did you go to college or university, or when did you come to the States? What was your 18 to 22 period like?
I went to university in Ontario. I went to Carleton University in Ottawa for 3 years, and I pretty much got into theater. And I did radio. I did FM. We were the first student station to go FM in Canada, and which was big deal. And I did a lot of jazz radio. I got really heavily into jazz, which I still love. And didn't do as much schoolwork, and I changed programs. And after 3 years, I quit with a couple credits to go, which infuriated my parents. And then I went across Canada and I worked on an oil rig briefly in the Rocky Mountains for Mobil Oil as a roughneck. And that was like one of the worst things I'd ever done in my life up until that point. Then I almost lost my arm on the oil rig one day, and but it didn't happen, obviously.
Right.
I lost the nerve for the gig, and I basically quit. It was these guys. It's a pretty intense and abusive lifestyle. They work these guys, from what I understand, it's even gotten worse. But they work these guys like 20, 25 days on, and then they give them 10 days off, and they pay them a lot of money. And on their time off, they're just drugging and whoring and worse.
Kind of like a modern day cowboy almost, really.
Yeah, and they're rough guys, and they hated me because they knew that I got my gig through my member of parliament. I asked my dad to, so he pulled a few strings. He was the Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development in Pierre Trudeau's cabinet. So when I got to this place, they fucking hated me. They hate university, and they called me university, and they'd whip tools at me. and I didn't know a spanner from a screwdriver I'm a middle-class marshmallow in terms of that stuff. Like, I didn't grow up in a garage. I didn't know how to open it. I know how to drive a car, but if you open the hood of the car, I don't know what I'm not that guy. So all of a sudden I'm in an oil rig in the middle of Alberta, Canada, where these guys are going, pass me the 440, and I go, what? You stupid asshole, and they're whipping shit at me, and I'm crying in my bed at night, going, what the fuck? And so that lasted about 20 seconds, and then I ended up hitchhiking to Vancouver, Canada, and ended up working in a record store for several months and living on barely any food. I wasn't really having the best relationship with my parents. My dad and I were kind of estranged, you could say. And then, long story short, decided to come back home, made a deal with my father and mother that they said, listen, if you want to go back to school, you can go back to school. We can help you with that. And I said, listen, I want to do this. I want to try to be an actor. And they sort of went, oh. And my dad said, okay. And he was very cool about this. And I've said this several times before in other interviews, but it's worth mentioning again and again. He said, listen, okay, if you want to be an actor, take a year and try to get what you can, if you get a job in a year, like a real job acting, he said, don't become a bartender or a waiter. Try to get a job acting somewhere. That was a challenge he issued. And if not, in a year's time, we'll reevaluate and you go back to school. I said, I thought that was a fair deal. Now, a year, but a minute, an hour I would have taken. I just wanted to be able to try to figure out what the fuck I wanted to do. I can swear, right?
Oh yeah, you say what the fuck you want.
Okay, I will. Darn it. So what happened was that within several months, I went to Toronto from London, Ontario, and I went to Toronto. And one night I walked by the Second City and I heard all this laughter. I went inside and my head just spun around and I went, oh my God, this is for me. I can go up on stage. I can be funny. They're improvising. I don't have to learn other people's lines. I can get paid. They pay their actors. And, so I hung out and started doing workshops, and there were a lot of people doing SCTV, and there's this guy named John Candy, who I got to know a little bit, and hung out with him, and he was teaching. We got him to teach a workshop. I started taking workshops, and I applied for my U.S. citizenship at some point during that period, and because I didn't want to stay in Canada. I figured if I was going to be an actor, I could broaden my opportunities in the U.S. And then it all came together. I got an opportunity to audition for Second City Chicago. The day I auditioned for Second City Chicago, August 4th, 1978.
78. Now, that's the feeder for SNL, right? Was there any SNL people came up through there? Not at that time in Chicago, or did you see any? You know what I mean? Like any of the 80s SNL guys coming through Second City?
Well, I mean, when I was in Second City in Toronto, there was a guy named Tony Rosato who eventually went on Saturday Night Live, and Robin Duke and Catherine O'Hara and all the Dave Thomas, all the SCTV people. And then when I was in Chicago, when I went into the company, or when I went into Chicago, George Wendt was there.
Okay.
A lot of people. Bill Murray had just left to go to SNL, and John Belushi, and it was a whole different crew of people. And my crew of people, sort of as it coagulated over the years, became a different group of people. Like Richard Kind was in my company with me, and
okay. So that brought you to the States. Now, what did that turn? What was your first? What got you into the acting, from the improv into the movies and stuff like that? Did you end up moving to Hollywood then, or what was your timeline after that?
No, I was in Chicago for several years. I was in Chicago from 78 through 85, 86.
Okay.
And from the first time I got in there, I said to when I got an agent, I said, I want to get into the movies. I want to be in films. That's what I wanted to do. Was one of my aspirations. And I got the opportunity in 81, 82 to audition for a few films. My first film was Thief, and my second film was and Thief was like a nothing burger part. I mean, it was, you can barely blink and you'll miss me, but it was like an opportunity to be in front of a camera. I got to be in a scene with Del Close, who was one of the directors of Second City.
Okay.
And long story short, I got another opportunity, and I was briefly in the movie Tootsie, although I never got credited, and that's another story. And then I got the opportunity to audition for John Hughes, and I did 16 Candles. And that's kind of kicked off where I got more into films and got film parts. And
I was, go ahead. Sorry.
Started in Chicago, and then as the years went by, I split to LA probably, finally around 85, when I came out here to do Roxanne, which was in 86.
Okay, I was checking out your cameos and your different roles in some of the non-Breakfast Club films. I mean, some of these are quite impressive, man. If we go over some of these roles, because some of these I barely remember. Something like some of these shows I was like really young when we were watching. You know what I mean? Like obviously you were in 16 Candles, but Weird Science. What did you play in Weird Science?
I was the white owner of a black bar, and there's a scene where I'm a Greek guy. I said, "What are you doing what's a pretty woman like you doing with a malaka like this?" And there are all these black guys with me that are I think Anthony Michael Hall is pretty buzzed, and he's doing he's playing this sort of jive black guy. It's a little edgy stuff when you watch it now, going,
Yeah, you can get rid of that today. That's awesome. That's funny.
I was there, yeah.
It says you were in Miami Vice. What did you play in Miami Vice?
I played a drug lawyer in an episode called The Milk Run. Sloan, the drug lawyer.
Did the guy get away, or what was the outcome of the trial?
I was representing some kids. They got into trouble. I got off. I mean, I was just in and out.
Okay, this is when Seinfeld is the sniffing
for Don Johnson's bullshit.
Okay. Now, how was Don Johnson back in the 80s? Was that cast like living the life of like a Vice City Miami style thing, or was it just kind of all for Hollywood and show?
I think there's a special room in hell for Don Johnson. That's all.
Okay. I'm not very familiar with Don Johnson's career, so that's funny. I'll have to look that up now.
Yeah, well, you don't want to get too close to that. It's a little bit radioactive.
What you were in Seinfeld? It says the sniffing accountant. How did you come about that role, and describe Seinfeld for me?
And do you know Seinfeld or no?
Oh yeah, I love Seinfeld. I'm a big, huge Seinfeld fan.
How did I come about that role? Well, I literally got a call on a Thursday around 2 p.m. saying, we've just faxed you over these sides. That's in the days of fax machines. And the sides being what the scene is. We call in show business, they're called sides. Little inside baseball shit. And they said, my agent said, they'd like you to come in and read for this part of Barry Prophet, his accountant. And I read the scene that they gave me. And I drove over to MTM Radford, CBS Radford Studios. Being too specific for you, over on Radford and Ventura.
Okay.
And went in and did my reading. And they came out and they said, could you wait here for about 20 minutes? And I waited, and they came back and they said, would you be willing to go into a rehearsal now? And we're going to do a reading for the network in about an hour. And I said, sure. So that's how I got the gig.
How long were you on? I mean, how long is the filming of like a sitcom, just a Seinfeld episode take?
Well, that was a Thursday. And then we do the way network readings is that every day around 5 or 6 o'clock, all the people from the network come in, or at least this is the way they did it. And you perform the whole show in front of these people who sit there, and then they take notes, and then they go give notes to the producers, and you go off. And that evening, you usually get a new script sent to you. In those days, it would be dropped off at your door by a courier. And now it's like PDF to you. And with all new rewrite. And so in that situation, you basically, it's a Monday to Friday situation where you rehearse block, a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, you shoot. You might do Thursday, you might shoot part of the show, and then Friday, they'll bring in an audience, and you'll shoot in front of an audience between 5 and 8 or 9 in the evening.
Okay.
So that's kind of the rhythm of that shit.
Did you get to meet Jerry and all like off the set and all that? How was Seinfeld off the set?
They were at the height of their game there. I think that they were feeling no pain in terms of the publicity. I mean, people were like, there was an air of being, I've been on a lot of these shows where, they're at the height of their popularity, Desperate Housewives, whatever. And I would say it's a mix of arrogance, self-confidence, and also they don't want to deal with you as much. So you just come in and do your thing. I mean, I did Home Improvement. There was a vibe. That was the vibe on that. I did Modern Family. They were nice, but you're coming into a well-oiled machine for a second or two, or a day or two, or a week, or whatever it is, and then you're sort of spit out. And they're going through so many actors and situations that you're kind of part of an assembly line.
Okay, makes more sense. Plug and play as it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that. It can be fun. It can be interesting, but it's kind of the nature of the beast. And I mean, I certainly don't resent it. I mean, I think a little. I mean, most of it is like being first day of school perennially all the time. It's like, because all the kids know one another and you don't.
That makes sense.
I worked on Justified. And everybody, I mean, that was a big cast, big crew. Like they have 4 or 5 camera guys, and everybody knows one another. So you come in and you really feel like a stranger. And then so I just don't say a bloody word, do my job. And then after a while, people start taking notice of me.
Okay.
And then they go, oh, yeah, him. And the funny thing that happens a lot, Joe, is that people won't know who the hell I am. I'll show up on the set. They'll think I'm a carpenter, or somebody that works in the crew, which is fine. And they say, what department are you with? And I go, well, I'm with the acting department, which is not what they call it. They just call it cast. And I'll go, yeah, I'm with the acting department. They go, yeah, right, over there, like sort of looking at me like, he's not what the fuck is he? So I'll get up into costume and makeup and stuff, and they'll put me in put me in front of the camera. And the people will come up and they'll look at me in person, and they'll look into the lens, and they'll look at the camera and they'll go, oh yeah, I know him. And they'll point at the picture on the camera when I'm sitting there. So they know me as the guy through the lens, but they don't know me when I'm sitting there. You understand?
Yeah, when they see you in real life, it's totally like, okay, it's just another guy. But when they say, oh, okay, I got you on camera now, boom.
Yeah, and when they see me commodified on camera, go, oh yeah, I know that guy. And like they're talking about me. and they're pointing at the monitor, and like I'm sitting there, yeah, that's me. but they don't really. People aren't really kind of interested in you. They're kind of more interested in meeting the characters you do. Anyway, so.
No doubt. You says you were on the X-Files as Special Agent Fordyce. I barely remember that one. Do you remember that being on the X-Files? What was that like?
You probably picked one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I had to say this unspeakably difficult language, and it wasn't fun. Let's not talk about it.
Okay. It says you were on CSI. What'd you do on CSI?
Oh, that was also not fun. I played a dead body that was I was a swinger at a party that gets killed and hogtied, and then my ass is sticking out, and I have an apple in my mouth.
Jeez.
You're going through all the things here, Joe.
Okay, so what about ER? You were on ER. It says, was it the same thing? Were you a bloated corpse on that, or what? What'd you pull up on ER? Were you a doctor?
On ER, was I on ER? Does it says I was? Says I was ER?
That's what I wrote down. Let me see here. Hold on. ER. Film.
I did do an episode of ER. It was a really minor part.
Mr. Ruby. Okay, I barely remember that one. Okay.
I barely remember it too.
All right, we got Frasier too. You were on Frasier. What'd you play on Frasier? A policeman? Was that just a minor part?
I mean, these are you're picking all the one-offs. Yeah. These are like, yeah, you're policeman number one. Could you step over here? Okay, take out your badge. That's it.
Well, so out of these next ones, just stop me if it's a role you remember. Okay, Boston Legal. You remember that?
Yeah, I play a racist cop, and I have a black guy representing me.
Okay, how'd you come out on that? Did you win?
No.
Uh-oh, you're in jail in that world, Boston Legal. All right, it says you already talked about Desperate Housewives. Gilmore Girls? I never watched that show. So what was that about?
I played Gilmore Girls. I played a teacher in a classroom. And not a fun experience.
Okay. What about Sweet Life of Zach and Cody? Do you remember those? Yeah,
I played Greek antiquities curator of a museum. It was a lot of fun, and the kids were a lot of fun on that. And a buddy of mine was one of the camera people, so that was a great experience.
Do you ever get, since you have Greek descent, do you ever get roles? Hey, we need a Greek guy. Like, did My Big Fat Greek Wedding ever call you or anything like that?
No, I never got called for them. I did a role many years ago in a movie about Aristotle Onassis with Raul Julia called Onassis, where I play his business partner. And that was fun. And occasionally I play a few Greeks. Yeah, I've played a few Greeks in my life.
Right. It says you were on iCarly. Do you remember that?
Yeah, iCarly. I played apartment manager. Oh, no, janitor of the building. That was it. The apartment janitor sort of manager. The kids' shows are fun because for the most part, they really, really keep them on time. So you don't never work overtime, and the kids work half days in school, kind of like in Breakfast Club. So you're sort of working with stand-ins most of the time.
Okay.
It's good work.
It makes it more good with child labor laws. I never thought about it like that. Like that's a way to go. If you're out there and you're an actor, go shoot towards kid shows. They'll belittle you and make you feel like an idiot because, like, I know this is a big pet peeve of mine. This isn't what you talking, but like on these kid shows, the parents are always bumbling idiots, and the kids think they can get it. And my kids they'll watch these shows and they'll think, oh yeah, I could just do that. And my son will try to fool me with something that's in plain sight. It's like, dude, I know what you're doing. I saw that in that episode. Don't even fool me here.
Well, as long as they're learning stupid stuff. I mean, if they were on the dark web learning the real stuff, then I'd be worried.
Oh, so totally.
I'd rather they just learn the stupid stuff. There was a show that one of our kids was watching. What's the name of it? Oh God, we hate it. No, Danger. What is it? Something Danger. It's on Disney or something. Next.
Totally can't remember because anymore my kids, I mean, it's weird because back in the iCarly days, 09, 2010, they would watch TV and then like as it went forward around, I don't know when it stopped, but 15, 16, somewhere in there, it's like a switch went off and they quit watching Disney and the networks and they started watching YouTube all the time. So I don't know when that happened. I mean, my son will sit there hours on end and just watch other people play YouTube video games and all kinds of stuff. Man, it's a different world for these little ones.
Yeah, and also the other thing that really is the ones where like people get the Jesus, like they hurt, like they're jumping off something and they get hurt, and the kids take a look at this guy just broke his head. It's like, oh yeah.
Before we get into the Breakfast Club, another movie, the last movie that I liked that you were in. I know this is probably a role you don't remember, but Santa Buddies: The Legend of Santa Claus. Do you remember that one?
I remember everything I did. It's just like when you ask me some of the small stuff from like 25 years ago. I mean, it is amazing to me some of the stuff I've done. Like, oh yeah, like for example, when I did Frasier, I was really looking forward to doing Frasier, and then they said you say 2 lines. I'm going, you've got to be joking, like. So yes, Nobody's was fun. I shot that up in British Columbia. That was, Joe, that was the full shitstorm. I mean, I had kids and animals and weather, and it was a lot of waiting on that one because you're down the totem pole in terms of oh, we don't need to shoot you. We still have to get the dogs and the kids today.
Okay, yeah, I would love that movie. Well, I like going back. If we go way back, Air Bud, when they first came out with Air Bud with the basketball, I love that one. I really like dogs, and then when they did that, and then they had the Receiver one, and then they had all the Buddies movies, and the kids when they really like those when they grow up, they're adorably cute, man.
I love dogs too. Mine is like sleeping over there, so he's not going to.
Okay. All right. So how old? You were 27, 28 when you heard about the Breakfast Club. How did you hear about the part for the Breakfast Club?
Well, I was in 16 Candles, and John Hughes mentioned that he had this movie called Breakfast Club. And I went to New York with Second City, and we were opening a show off Broadway at this club called the Village Gate. And I opened the Variety, the trade papers in those days. There were trade papers, and there was an East Coast edition. And I opened it up, and I see John Hughes lensing the Breakfast Club in Chicago, and they listed the cast, and in the cast was Rick Moranis of the part that I would have probably been playing. And I closed the Variety and went, oh well, so much for that. Literally within 2 hours, I got a phone call from my agent in Chicago saying, listen, they're recasting this role. They want you to come in tomorrow. And that's how it happened. I flew in. I told my company that who I was shooting with who I was doing the play with in New York, I said, you got to get an understudy. What am I doing with the camera?
Perfect.
Earthquake. And so basically I went to Chicago and started working the Breakfast Club. Boom, like that. And I worked on it for about 9, 10, probably under 2 weeks. And it was like coming into it, like these guys, they're all tight. They knew one another. They'd been shooting this thing for a couple months. Rick Moranis didn't work out. He and John had a parting of the ways in terms of the way he wanted to do the character.
I was just going to see about that. And I read on the page of the Breakfast Club, it says he wanted to do a play as a bearded Russian with a Russian accent. Was that true?
I don't know whether it was bearded, but I think he wanted to play him as a Russian dude with a big wad of keys between his legs that he sort of was always jangling and playing with in a sort of provocative way. And Rick is a very talented, funny man, as we know, and like he's made an indelible impression in a lot of movies. So he had his way of seeing it. And John said, well, did you read the script? The guy went to this high school and, all this sort of stuff. And so it didn't work out.
Now, I just rewatched Breakfast Club earlier today because I know you're coming on, so I wanted to get some fresh stuff in my mind here. Now, in the beginning of the movie, right in the beginning, they do the Man of the Year part. Now, that's a picture of you, right? Was that a recent picture of you, or at that time, how did they get that picture of you? What was that picture of you?
They took it at that time, and we used a wig.
Oh, nice. They just improvised it. They didn't get a picture of you actually from school. Hilarious.
No, it was. But that was at that stage of my life where I was rapidly losing my hair, around 27 or 8 years old, which was a
same here. We're in the hair club for men here too.
Yeah, it was a drag, but that's the way it happened for me.
Okay. Now, go ahead.
Picture then that was a mock-up picture.
Okay. So when you first come out in the movie, it's about 30 minutes in. You're Carl the Janitor, and you come into the library and you say hi, Brian, to Anthony Michael Hall when he first comes in. Obviously, the joke being, the dork of the school would know the janitor. Now, I read that there was a deleted scene where the reason was how you knew Brian was because you went into the locker, as you said in the movie, you went into the lockers, you see things, you hear things, stuff like that, and you found the flare gun and then reported it. Was that cut out of the script, or how did that work out?
No, that wasn't. I never found the flare gun. That's just not true. There is a Criterion DVD available Blu-ray, which has all the scenes that I shot that were cut from the movie on that. And what I did do was, by the way, that clock's 20 minutes fast. Before that, I come in, I go, you think I'm just an untouchable peasant peon and all that sort of stuff. Following a broom around after shitheads like you. I learned a few things, and I read your lockers, I go through your notes and all that stuff. And then what I did was I point at Molly Ringwald. I said, you think you're a big, sexy girl, right? Well, you're going to be a big girl when you get to be 40. You're going to be way overweight. You're going to have a Ford Explorer, and you're going to have hanging off you like dogs hang off a mummy, and you're going to be popping pills, and you're going to be, and then I went to Ali Sheedy. You're going to become a big artist, and you're going to become a big jagoff, and or whatever. It went to Michael Hall. You're going to become a big lawyer. You're going to have a big heart attack at 45. So I basically tell them where they're all going to be. Bender, you're going to end up in jail or whatever. I did this whole predictive thing where they're all going to be like today, like 2020 or something. And it was funny, but it was a little bit on the head, as they say. I mean, it was and I improvised a lot of it with Hughes at the helm. And a lot of that was improvised when the camera was on me. So a lot of the people that were sitting in the seats were not often the actors, because a lot of them had to go off to school and stuff. So
you were just talking when you were like, I am the eyes and ears of this institution, my friends. You were just saying that to a blank camera sometimes?
I'd be saying it to their stand-ins.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's crazy.
But that's that. Yeah, I could be saying it to an X on the wall too, because that's the way of the natural world of film acting. I mean, the whole sequence with Paul Gleason in the basement, where I said, if you were 16, what would you think of you, and all that sort of stuff. That was a memorable sequence because it was just Paul and me in the basement, and there was no. I mean, it was a pretty direct scene. Sometimes it can be indirect, but anyway, there was this whole thing that I told the kids where they're going to all be in the future, and that was all cut out. And there were a lot of other things we shot. I mean, it'd be fun to get the Criterion disc at some point and take a look at it.
Now, it said in some of the trivia notes that they had you isolated from the rest of the cast to keep it feel like a janitor. Is that true, or is that kind of just another urban legend thing like with the flare gun?
No, that is true, but that was actually by my choice.
Okay.
They didn't say I need to isolate. I just said, "Where's the janitor's room?" And I went there and slept, and read and worked on my lines and just hung to myself. I mean, there was no need for me to hang out with the kids insofar as like getting to know them and kibitz with them and talk with them, which is fine. But after a point, while everybody's kind of in their own bubble when you're shooting a movie, and there was a lot of intensity with that group of people, and Hughes kind of wanted to keep them as a unit, which is fine.
Okay. Now,
Paul Gleason was a piece of work.
Now you were how old were you when that movie came out? 28 to when you were filming? 28, 27, something like that?
27, 8, yeah, in there.
Okay, so you weren't much older than Judd Apatow, right? Wasn't he? Is that his name? I forgot the guy's name.
Judd Nelson?
Judd Nelson, yeah. You were about the same age as him, no?
He was 23 or 4, and I was about 4 years older. But
okay, did you ever see him offset or anything, or was just for that movie and that was it?
No, never hung with the guys, never drank with them, never went to a meal, never did any of that stuff. Wasn't part of the, zeitgeist of that sort of. They never came to Second City, but at that time either. But
now, out of the first scene you were in with you first come up and introduced, how much of that was improvised and how much of that was in the script? I mean, are you proud of any of the lines that you had in that first part, like the eyes and institution? Eyes and ears, then that's probably the most famous line from that first scene, at least.
That's a good question. A lot of that was scripted. But what John would do is we'd shoot a lot of stuff as scripted, and then he'd say, when you say that eyes and ears in the institution, add, I read your notes, I go through your lockers. So we would, a line might be written like that, and then we'd add something to it. Maybe the clock 20 minutes fast. He goes, hey, before you go out, just point at the clock and say, clock's 20 minutes fast. And stuff like that. The John Lennon line, when I was a kid, I wanted to be John Lennon. That was my line. But you only did things in a John Hughes movie with his permission. I'd say, hey, listen, I'm thinking about saying something like this. He'd go, yeah. Or no, we'll try it this way or whatever. But it was kind of like running a play in football. You'd sort of go, I think I'm thinking of that. Well, no, we'll go over here, Or it's or playing music or something. There's always a little bit of give and take. And when you're working with a guy like John, or any director that really is very conscious of how the words and everything sound and everything, which is what movies are about, words and pictures, right? Then, he can be very specific. I mean, when I worked on 16 Candles, he and Michael Hall were like, it's almost like they were the same puppet, they one talk, the other talk, and they were just, it was weird. They were like, there was something kind of chemically connected about the two of them. And I mean, you hear when people do movies, when I watch interviews with people doing movies today or anytime, that connection, that De Niro talks about with Scorsese or something, that's important, right?
Oh yeah. Now, when you the next scene that you were in, when you did go down and find the confidential files and you found the principal going into there, in this scene, you were like, you got $50, and then they cut away for several minutes, and then it comes back and you guys are bullshitting. Now, did you get in the movie, would you say you got the $50 at that point?
Oh yeah.
And that's why you just bribed the principal. I mean, that's kind of
in real life, when you see that scene again, take a look. When I go $50, take a look at Gleason's face, because he wasn't expecting me to say that. That was to cut him off. This is a story that I've told an awful lot, but it's worth telling again. Gleason was sort of buying screen time that moment. So his line was, well, Carl, these are important papers, and I've got to be. So I was waiting for a specific line that he had to say, and he was sort of telegraphing it out. And he was humming and hawing and stuff. And then after like 2-3 takes where it was like really going on, and the $50 wasn't in the script. Right? There was no $50. He was just like, and I'm just like listening to him making an excuse. Hughes just comes over and whispers in my ear. He says, cut him off and just say $50. He's like, Carl, and I go, $50. And the look on his face, and then they yell, cut. And he comes up to me and goes, what the fuck are you doing? And he starts poking his finger in my chest. And I put my hands behind my back because I'd heard a few things about Paul in terms of his confrontational ways. And anyway, it got a little bit testy after that.
Okay, he was fine. I mean, if you take a holistic look at that movie and how, I mean, granted, some of the students did, especially the Judd character, provoked him a lot, but man, he was extraordinarily violent, and a lot of that stuff, from the 70s, 80s, growing up, and a lot of people, that was their school life that just nobody talked about, and there was a lot of abuse in schools. And
I mean that I've seen the movie several times recently, and you really do see it under a different lens. And of course, Molly's been talking about sort of the slut shaming and all this sort of stuff that's been going on. But you forget that that basically Gleason hits Bender. He beats the shit out of him at one point, or beats him. I mean, come on, man, that ain't cool.
You have to restrain yourself as a school administrator. If you're out there and you're a principal, don't beat your kids. It's not good.
No, and Gleason had a bit of a reputation as being his buddy's Bob Duvall, and they come from they're a bunch of guys in Hollywood. It's a long reputation. You hear about them that are, they'll sooner cold cock you than talk to you. And these aren't your Shakespearean British actors. I'm talking about, your sort of rugged American types. And like, for my money, they can fuck off and die, because I think that's bullshit. I'm sorry. If you want to cold cock somebody, then, you got issues. But I'm not. I'm a tough customer my own way, but I'm not gonna. So
I'm
you
not.
know, and Don Johnson was like that too. You could just tell he just wanted to, And I'd heard these things like, really, you want to hit me, you know? And so I just put my hands behind my back and said, okay, turn on the cameras. You guys want to hit me? Turn on the cameras, do it on camera, and let's get it on camera, and then I can talk to my lawyer.
Now, when you was sitting there, you had a White Sox, retro White Sox shirt on. Now, do you still have that shirt? How did you even get that shirt?
I do.
Nice. How did you come about that shirt and the thing?
Honestly, Joe, it's about this big. I mean, I'm an XL now. I mean, it was, I think it's a medium. And Marilyn Vance, who's the costume designer, she cut a little thing down the thing of it. But I do. I don't think you could probably use that in a movie today without permission.
Yeah, you'd have to get a hold of MLB, and because they use those retro logos now. That's the '80 Sox logo. Because we were both in Chicago in '85ish. That was my first baseball game. Actually, it was Old Comiskey Park. I saw the Indians play the White Sox there. That place was a serious dump. Really was, man. Do you remember Old Comiskey at all?
Well, I remember Disco Demolition.
Oh, gee, I was a little young for that, but I actually studied that with Bill Veeck. That was awesome, man. Blowing up disco records. Literally.
It's funny you should mention Bill Veeck, because there was this whole piece on NPR I was listening to this morning about Bill Veeck and the 48 Cleveland Indians when they played the Boston Braves. And they were talking about how Satchel Paige and how he basically brought a lot of blacks into the team. Bill Veeck is an interesting character. But by the time he was a showman, he was a real piece of work. But have you seen the Bee Gees documentary on HBO?
I have not. Did it just come out? I do have HBO Plus.
You should see it. I'm not a huge Bee Gees guy, but the documentary is really good. And they make the point that the Disco Demolition was a pretty racist act. And in a lot of ways it was, because it was kind of vilifying black disco music. And it really was anti, like a lot of the disco groups like Bee Gees and this and that were like, I mean, I remember that time because going back, I worked in the record store, so I think I priced more $8.98, $5.99 Saturday Night Fever albums than I could. But that's one of my favorite stories, is that I would be pricing Steve Martin's album in Vancouver in 1978, and then 6 years later, I'm in a limousine with Steve going past the record store, going on my way to work in Roxanne, and I said, 6 years ago I was pricing your album, and now I'm sitting with you here. Nice.
There's a movie I haven't watched in years, Roxanne. That's the one with the beard, is that big nose, right?
Yeah, it was on TV the other night. It's kind of dated. But yeah, it's cute.
Now, when you were sitting there talking with the principal, you mentioned this generation taking care of you 20 years from now. Now that you're at that age, how do you feel about Gen X taking care of you? You think we're going to do a good job for you?
Well, you're not taking care of me, thank God. But,
I'm physically not taking care of you, but
it's funny how those things happen. I think that, I think for the most part, everybody's doing their job right. We're getting through this goddamn year, which has been, trying for everybody. Overall, I'm proud of Gen X.
We do our thing. We're a little lazy, man. I'm a pothead. We just like doing our thing, but we get stuff done eventually. We might not get it done right now, but eventually we'll get that shit done. Gen X is
you might find this surprising, but I'm not a huge fan of the baby boom. I think they fucked things up a lot.
Well, I mean, every gen. I mean, and they were handed it's everybody's nature to just complain and not take into account how good you have it. I mean, if we're being honest, most people who are watching this, everybody's watching this, has internet. You have cable, at least. You have a flush toilet. You can get up in the morning, turn on a light. If you have a problem, you can go back to bed. There's a lot of people in the world, they got to walk 3 miles to get water every day and wash their clothes in the river. You got it pretty good if you're watching this right now. I just got to say that.
Well, Joe, you couldn't say something more true than that. I mean, it's really disgraceful driving around Los Angeles and taking a look at the way the homeless situation is presently. It breaks my heart. I'm a pretty political animal, and this all started, in my estimation, in 1980 when Ronald Reagan was elected. But this country is really got to rectify its feelings towards its lesser citizens. That's all I have.
Well, in California, there's this. Do you know a guy named Dave Kirsch? He was in Menace to Society, and he's out there in LA too. But I interviewed him a while back. But he was telling me about it's just so bad out there with the homeless problem. And I mean, obviously up here in the north, we don't really get it as much because it's cold. But you go down to the southern states, and it's just all over. Like California, it's so exacerbated by obviously like you were saying, government policies, and then just the haves and the have-nots of capitalism. Man, it really.
Well, I mean, to be truthful about it, there's this area in LA that's called Skid Row, and it's I forget how many square mile area. Let's say it's a 5 square mile area of downtown, where basically the police and the powers that be in the city keep the most infirmed homeless people that are all over the map, mentally, physically, etc. They keep them in that area. The problem that's happened is that the homeless aren't going to play ball anymore. They're saying, fuck you, I'm going to stay under this underpass. I'm going to go into this neighborhood. I'm going over here, and you try to deal with me. And for the most part, they can't keep them in that area. And so what's happening is people like myself are going, oh, look at how horrible the homeless situation is. Well, all that's really happening is that they're getting out of their little box from downtown and they're coming over to your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, white middle class or whatever people we are, fucking deal with it. And as a middle class marshmallow, I think that it's about time I put on my big boy pants and said, let's fucking deal with this. And these people are real. I mean, when I call myself a middle class marshmallow, I think there are a lot of people that recoil. This NIMBYism. Oh, I'll take care of the homeless, but not here.
Yeah, not in my backyard. Not here on my street. I feel it. I mean, it's like as a society. I mean, how many? We're getting political here, but how many yachts does Jeff Bezos need? I mean, you don't need somebody making. How many billions is enough? 10 billion. Just cut it off and redistribute.
Well, I have family and friends that. Invariably you have people that argue over money and siblings don't talk to one another or whatever. Not in my immediate family, but I always say to them at the end of the day is, how much money do you need? How much do you really need?
Exactly.
It's like Brewster's Millions. You can't spend it all in 1 week. Come on now. And I think that the one thing that's really troubled me about my business, show business, is that just to bring it back to what we're talking about here, is like there's this sense of greed that I think that I've seen from other people. Like they don't want to share the wealth.
Nope.
Not even in the like, hey, generosity in terms of like whatever. It's something. And people used to be a lot more generous in terms of turning on other people to gigs and this and that. That just doesn't happen. There's too much of I'm looking after my own, and that's not good. But anyway,
it's not. I know that's why I like YouTube, because I mean it's a lot slower growth process. I mean I could put up Joe reacts to latest music video and get 1 million views tomorrow if I wanted. That's not how I want to grow on YouTube. And I found that once you get to a certain level, people get a little territorial. They don't want to help others grow. And like you were saying, how much money do you really need? If you're comfortable in life and you're doing your thing, spread the wealth a little bit. Not saying you have to be open to the point where if you have a talent, you can't sell that talent, but connect with people, bond with them, understand their plight, and just don't be a meano, man. There's so many, especially on social media, Facebook and Twitter. I got to stay on Facebook because in Facebook at this point in my life, it's so intertwined. Like I don't even answer the phone anymore. If you just hit me up on Messenger, you know what I mean? But it's like, you just got to be kind out there. I mean, you can't be. So people are everybody watches. Be nice, man. Be nice. My God.
It doesn't work for me otherwise. And I think if you're in the creative world, I think you need to make creative connections in a positive way. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be Pollyanna and a rollover every time.
Oh yeah.
But by the same token, I think that there's this sort of there's a lot of gnarliness out there. I mean, I've been attacked several times on social media. It's just like to what end? I mean, I won't even go into it because I think it sort of perpetuates the bullshit. But
it's a waste of energy at some point. If somebody comes on and says, "Oh, you're an idiot" or whatever, okay, do you think I'm an idiot? There's 7 other billion people who probably disagree with you, so whatever.
Yeah, or I might just say, "Yeah, I'm an idiot," and
Yeah, and you're still following me. You're still watching the show, so good luck with that.
In terms of YouTubers, I mean, I have a question for you. Do you think that they're selfish in a way after a while, after they reach a sort of fame limit?
I would say it's about 50-50. You get if somebody came up and they started small and they built their subscribers and they bonded with people, they're typically a lot more generous and more giving and helpful. But if you got somebody who's famous and just started a channel or blew up on something, some of them get a real big ego and for no. I mean, if you're making I do this as a hobby, this isn't making money, and if somebody's out there, oh, I got this many subscribers, and it's like, well, at the end of the day, I'm making more money than you in real life. How are you doing that? Why is your head so big?
I mean, I'm not obviously of this generation, and I'm not really fixated on YouTube in that regard. But my experience of watching it, like somebody like Jake Paul, was huge, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you fall out of favor or QB Pie or whatever, I mean, then it's gone, right? I mean, so is it the fear of meteoric? I mean, you have meteoric rise, but is it also the fear of meteoric failure too?
I would say so, because Jake Paul, funny mention him. He's actually grew up with 10 minutes down the road from here in Westlake. I live about, I could throw a stone 3 times and hit the town he lived in. He went to Westlake High School. He was a big wrestler, so his boxing background is actually legit. But yeah, I think that might be a lot of it too. Is like if you with the hard rises are the huge falls too. I'm not
commenting on the person in particular as much as just sort of the arc of their career, so-called career.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, people's attention spans nowadays is so, just like that. People are like, oh, why don't you report on TikTok? I'm like, I got long form content. I'm not going to do a 30-second TikTok video of me dancing. That's not the kind of audience I want. You know what I mean?
So do you run this whole thing just like us talking like this?
Yeah. Normally on Friday nights, I got sometimes originally it was me and 3 other buddies. And then, as life goes, I got jobs. So sometimes we'll try to get everybody together, but typically, I'll just, we'll have people sit over here and, just do their show with me and we'll just talk about whatever. But yeah, it's all, everything's financed by me and just run out of my garage. I turned the whole back end in my garage in this little studio thing. And it's kind of like my own personal Wayne's World a little bit. It's like, I always think back, what would
commercials.
I always think, what would myself when I was in high school think about myself now? It's like, well, I got, my own, YouTube Friday night show. I got a garage, a satellite dish, and this and that. It's like, okay, my young self would have thought I did pretty good. So I'm happy with myself. I mean, could I go up from here? Who knows? I mean, I'm always willing to go up, but in the end, I'm doing this just because I want to do it, and that's it. I mean, I'm not gonna. I get people sometimes will be like, oh, Joe, you got to get a hold of this person. They were on 90 Day Fiance. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't watch that show. I'm not gonna perpetuate stupidity. I mean, I'm gonna get people on who love the craft and just love talking. That's just how I like doing it. Very
good.
So how are you? You're out in California there. You guys got lockdowns out the yin yang. How are you? How you dealing with the COVID stuff? Are you? Is it affecting your life a lot, or is it at this point it's kind of like whatever?
It's a good question. It affected my life because I like to travel and I work a lot of different places. I have pretty much been up in Canada. I was up in Vancouver from October through. And then I came back here just before Christmas, and then I went back. I had to quarantine there for 2 weeks, the Canadian law. So I had to be in a hotel room for 2 weeks and couldn't go outside at a threat of $1 million fine.
Jeez.
So, I mean, and then they keep on top of you too. You have an app and they're location spotting you, and you don't want to break the law. And also, you don't want to get sick. Oh, here's my phone. 1 second.
Totally.
Commercial break.
This break is brought to you by the Square Table Degenerates podcast.
Yes. Good. How are you? So the speaker plug is in the drawer. This is important stuff. I'll bring it to you, dear. I'm doing this live on this podcast right now. No, it's okay. Heidi needs her speaker plug.
Everybody needs a speaker plug. Can't go wrong there.
And other plugs too, right? Okay, lover. I'll bring it to you. Bye.
I'm still impressed. Let me say I'm impressed you still got a landline. I haven't seen one of those in years.
Yeah. But the thing about it is it's actually I thought it was still a landline, but the electricity goes out and everything. It's actually over the computer line. So like, screw it.
Oh, so it doesn't work anyways. Okay, nice.
Fake landline.
So what upcoming projects you got? Are you still out there acting? What you got going on?
I'll answer the pandemic question. Was tough. It's been tough, I think, for a lot of actor friends of mine, a lot of people. And I just say to your audience out there, everybody take it easy when you're sort of getting back into culture here, because I think it can be a shock to your system. I have had moments of really deep anxiety during the pandemic too. It's like, honestly, Joe, I thought at the beginning of it, and people are going to say, well, why does he ever want to work again? Because I want to work again. It's like, I thought, well, fuck it. It's over for acting. How's this going to happen again? How am I going to be standing 6 inches away from somebody with a room full of people and cameras and all that stuff? How's that going to work? But I'm having a little bit more sense of optimism now. And, I had a friend that was really ill with it, but I know nobody personally that's died from it, but I know a lot of people that have gotten it. So.
Yeah, my father passed away, but it was weird, man, because like he got
from COVID.
It was a tertiary cause. Let me set up the timeline.
Oh, I'm sorry, bro.
No, in November 2019, he had asthma, respiratory issues. He was hospitalized from November 19 to like maybe April, and then he got out. He was in a nursing home and everything, and then he got out, and then like last June, he came over. I remember the day. It was June 3rd. I had a dumpster in front of the house. He came over and he hit the front tire of his car, and he got a flat tire. So at that point, I knew something was wrong. So I just took him, back to the house, and then the ambulance took him to the hospital and whatnot. And he had the same thing. He had respiratory ailments and stuff like that. But then, like 5 days before he passed away, they called me and said, "Oh yeah, your dad has COVID," which I'm thinking is kind of odd because he's been in facilities this whole time, for like 2 months. How is he going to get it? He must have had to get it there. So help me, what's going on there? And then like 5 days later, they said. So I'm kind of, this is me personally, the way they classify some of these deaths. Like my father really didn't take care of himself the last several years of his death. It was whatever. My mom died, and he just was drinking and stuff like that. But it's not. He would have probably passed away within a year or two, regardless. So like, did it cause it? I don't know. It might have been an exacerbating factor, but like in terms of me and how I don't know. It's just weird to think, because I think that there's some sort of like there was no reason to classify that as a COVID death, in my opinion. Does that make sense? Like he was. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's just, I think that can't speak specifically to your dad's thing, but I mean, I think that there's a lot of mystery surrounding a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah, and I think people are so reactionary and just yelling at people about things. It's like not everybody is going to take news in the same way. I mean, a lot of us get, like me and you, like we like to travel, or we get stir crazy sitting in the house. It's a lot for somebody who likes going out several times a week, going to concerts, shows, games, stuff like that, traveling. To say sit in the house and have virtual fun all the time. I mean, we're doing the best, sure, but I mean, after a while, it eats on you, man. I mean, you can't. I don't want to. I mean, this is me talking. I don't want to wear a mask for the next 8 years. I mean, to wake me up when the masking is over, and then we can get on with life. You know what I mean? And let's figure out a way out of it, and then just go. And I think a lot of the states, the way the states do it, every state has their own different policy, and that's just a cluster F of magnanimous proportions, because you can go to Texas and walk around a Walmart with no mask. You come up, go to California, you got 25% dining, and you got to put your mask up in between bites and shit like that. So it's all over the place, man.
I just think we're all going to look forward to this being a memory.
I think so too. I think the 20 years are just going to be a fun time, man. I really do. I think eventually, once it's finally behind us, we can roll on. We're going to have a blast getting together and having fun, man. Heck yeah. So,
I mean, and you asked me what I'm doing next. Probably going to go and do a couple more of these Hallmark movies, which are, they're okay. They're great people. It's not the most exciting stuff in terms of content, but I'm not there to comment on it as much as work in it. I'm writing a lot, and I'm working on trying to sell something that way. But opportunities come up. People are always sort of sniffing around, and I'm always auditioning. That's what I have to do. I'm always auditioning.
You always got to hustle, man.
I think in the last two months, I've probably done about 15 videotaped auditions.
Oh, wow.
And gotten 0.
Well, here's what you got to do. You just got to stalk social media and find out who the Breakfast Club fans are, and then just see which people those are. Just built on your old past, man.
So when does this air? When do you put this out
This will probably air on the 9th because I got a local radio guy coming in on the 2nd, so I'm not going to air it next Friday. So probably April 9th I'll air it.
So have we reached the end of our road? Is that it?
Yeah, we're pretty much wrapping it up. I've got all my questions on. Unless you got anything you want to ask me or anything you got going on.
Well, do you think that they're going to rename the team the Municipals? Because I think that's the shittiest name.
I think it'll probably end up being the Spiders, but the only problem I have with the Spiders, because there was a National League team from like 1898.
What about Moondogs?
Moondogs is doable because they did have the Moondog coronation ball, but the only problem with that is the Cavs mascot's name Moondog, so I don't think they're going to go that route. I can see them doing Guardians because there's a big Guardians.
It's going to be Cleveland Rocks. I hate to say it.
We had a female team called the Rockers for a while too, so I don't know if that's going to be it, but I would if I was a betting man, I'd probably say Spiders just because it has the most connotation, and you can have the coolest logo with that. And we got
the connotation with Spiders.
Well, in 1898, there was a National League team called the Cleveland Spiders, but they were so bad. You can look it up. The worst record in Major League history. They went like 20 and 130 or some shit. What happened was that the guy who owned the Spiders also owned another team. Anytime somebody was good, he would just ship them from Cleveland to the other team. So Cleveland was just like the minor league team for this. They were so bad. That's why the connotation for me, it's like we haven't won a World Series since 1948, man. It's like I don't want to, get more of a losing legacy. Thinking back to the worst team in history.
How about the Eries? No, that wouldn't work.
I honestly would like Walleye, but I think there's already a minor league team called Walleye because we're right here by the lake. But I don't know. It's going to be eventually. What I think they'll probably end up doing, and this sounds weird too. It's either going to be Spiders or they'll just call it Cleveland Tribe, and get rid of all the imagery or whatever. Maybe have a feather or something like that, non-innocuous. Because it's a fine walking line.
I think Tribe is a great name.
Because that's our chant. Let's go Tribe. It makes sense.
But would the people think Tribe is an Indian thing too?
That's the only. They would have to find a way to deliver it where it doesn't have any Native American connotations to it. Is how I would think. But I don't. That would be the best bridge because. We're here in Cleveland, man. We're married to the Wahoo. I've had several episodes about how good the chief is and this and that. Is it offensive to some people? I don't know. I think there's more white people who are offended by it than actual, because I've got, friends out there.
The Wahoo looks like an Italian grocer, for Christ's sake.
Right. Like, hey, how you doing? I'm a chief of Wahoo.
All right. Nice talking to you.
Outstanding. Appreciate Mr. John Kapelos joining us. Thank you so much. You can catch him, on The Breakfast Club and all his outstanding movies and spot parts he did over the years. I thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you. Be well.
All right.